even know whose program it was. So I'm real happy about that. It's good to have you. And this is really something else. I would just like to talk to you for a moment, if you don't mind, about your background. I mean, I'm seeing Blue Angels, I'm seeing SEAL Team 5, and I'm seeing the synthetic bioorganic chemist. It's like, how does a man find enough time to do all of this?
Well, I guess it's because I'm the ultimate opportunist. My luck really found me. I didn't pick this path. Started out really as a kid just watching way too much Star Trek and wanted to become an astronaut. That was my dream of my life. And so when I had the opportunity in college, I studied sort of the ticket to the aerospace program, which was manned space at that time to the moon, which is what I was really interested in. And so the engineering degree was sort of the ticket to go there. And just as I was graduating, they killed the funding for manned space, and haven't been back to the moon since. So it's been an interesting journey for NASA, I'm sure. But for me personally, I had to kind of rethink what I wanted to do, because I really didn't want to design rocket engines or other kinds of things like that. So I went back to school, got another degree in synthetic bioorganic chemistry, because that was the ticket to my next parallel interest, which was medicine. And at that time, chemistry was a really important part of pre-med curriculum. And so having that as a degree really helped, I think, to provide me with some choices about which medical school to go to. And so I did that, and I did that on the Naval Scholarship Program, which was just coming out of Vietnam. They had a dearth of physicians and were looking to add people into the military. And having had a very strong history in my family of the Navy, that was the branch that I chose. And I was fortunate enough to get selected. And so I started my naval career as an ensign, actually during medical school. So every summer I would do externships in Balboa and San Diego, or Portsmouth in Norfolk. And so my career started that way. And so I'd had three kind of separate tangential experiences, but they're all focused on the same thing, which was, exploring and science and, trying to reach the stars however I could. So that pretty much wrapped it up in a nutshell. And then, of course, when I graduated medical school, I went directly into the Navy full time. And because of my interest in potentially becoming an astronaut, I applied for the flight surgery program, was accepted, and then went to Pensacola, where I started my flight training, and was fortunate enough to get a position at the Naval Aeromedical Research Institute right there on the naval base in Pensacola. And one of my collateral duties happened to be the Blue Angels were stationed there, so they asked me if I would provide backup flight surgery services for the Blues, which I did for my entire experience there in Pensacola. So I had an opportunity to fly with probably some of the finest pilots in the world, I think unquestionably, and fine men too. So it was a tremendous honor and a great experience. But one of the things that I found also interesting was I'd always been a diver. I've been a sport scuba diver my whole life. And I had an opportunity to go to Panama City to get a diving certificate and to be able to run the decompression chambers for the Navy. And they were doing some very interesting profiles, some very deep and very long profiles, which is where I had my first encounter with SEALs. And I developed a relationship with them, and some of the guys asked me to come out on a temporary duty basis as the TDY to go to San Diego, which I did on multiple occasions, and worked with them doing all kinds of crazy stuff that the SEALs do. And so that was my experience. And I had planned actually to do and apply for the astronaut program as a mission specialist coming out of the Navy. And I had all these various tickets. I mean, as a dive officer and as a flight surgeon, and chemist and engineer and physician, and they heavily recruited me. And then, of course, Challenger grew up, and that sort of scrapped that ambition. So I retired and went in, because at the same time I was running emergency rooms, and ER was my specialty. And so I came in private practice, and for about 10 years in Tampa, in the Tampa Bay area, I ran some of the largest level 1 trauma centers here in the area until 1993, when I retired from patient care medicine, only to pick up and begin a career in the business of medicine, which has been very interesting and led me down a lot of different paths, and allowed my wife and I reformed a bunch of companies and taken a couple of them public. And it's just been a very interesting process. I really look back as very blessed, having had all of these experiences, and led me to where I am today. Interested in a lot of different things with a lot of different kinds of expertise. Some things I think I'm more skilled at than others, but I guess I'm a dilettante in a lot of things, and very seriously in a few.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings you up to where I am today.
Well, I know what is conspicuously absent, which from what you've been saying is, now, do I understand this to be 2 Chief of Naval Operations commendations?
I did. I had the opportunity to do some very interesting things along the way. And again, I guess it's the inventor in me. I think inventors are born. I think we're hatched. and that kind of a mindset of always looking at problems and demanding to come up with solutions. And there were 2 very glaring holes in the military medicine side of things. And one of them was a completely antiquated alcohol, drug, and rehab kind of a program that they had set up literally in the 50s that had not been updated for about 30 years. And so it was woefully inadequate, certainly to meet the needs of the modern Navy at that time, where, guys are stressed, and alcohol and drugs are unfortunately a big part of people that have stress and live in crisis, and are pushed to the max. So the Navy needed to have that rebooted, and I took that on. I took that project on myself. I got a chance to be flown around to all of the major drug and rehab centers that the Navy had at the time, and I visited with the people and put together a program and completely revamped the entire manual medical department for the alcohol and drug rehab. And as I read it about 5 years ago, it still had not been updated since I did it. It could use it, believe me, but no one has, I guess, picked up the mantle to take it forward. So that work is still in place. And my second one was that there was, for flight surgeons as a specific group, there wasn't a particular methodology from an administrative standpoint of how to work with flight surgeons within the Navy itself. So I put together an entire program that basically provide more specifications and different avenues for flight surgeons in terms of their career paths and other things that they could do from both clinical medicine, research medicine, administrative medicine, et cetera. And it delineated a lot of the requirements and things like that for guys to go into, because there was nothing before, and it was completely hit and miss. And this allowed a little bit of concrete to sit around those kinds of career paths. And for both of those things, for the rehab program and for putting together the flight surgery program like I did, CNO gave me I didn't seek it. My CO thought it was worthwhile, and he submitted those for me, and those were granted and awarded before I left.
Gotcha. Let me ask you this. I think you've really you've touched on it 2 or 3 times, but just kind of obliquely, or is it obliquely? I can't remember. But what's the chief difference between aviation medicine and regular medicine down here on, with your feet on the dirt medicine?
Wow. It's a vastly different kind of an environment.
I was thinking it might be.
I remember the first day in flight school. Our instructor stood up in front of all of us, and there was a mixture of flight surgeons and pilots in training. And he said, flying is not dangerous, as a lot of people might like to think. It's just inherently intolerant of error. And that stuck with me my whole life. It's not dangerous. It just doesn't tolerate error very well. And when you have guys flying at, Mach 1 or better, in close formation and other kinds of things, the physical stresses on the body, not just from G-forces, but from pressure differences and all kinds of other things, can wreak havoc on the body. In fact, pilots are known to age much more rapidly than people that just, spend their lives on terra firma. And so my job was to make sure that my guys were always fit and ready, and that their fitness reports were in place, and that they were in top physical shape. You absolutely have to be in top physical shape, specifically to fly in the jet environment. The Navy has several different environments. It has helos and props and jets, and there are actually different physical requirements for each one of those three groups. At least they were at the time that I was there. And so I had to make sure that each separate group of guys and gals, because we did have women pilots coming into the Navy at that time, and so everybody had to be fit. And the kinds of things that I saw are vastly different from the types of things you see in people on the ground. I mean, you would have things where somebody would have the beginning of a cold, and then they go up to altitude and they couldn't come down.
Oh boy.
Because they have what we call a sinus squeeze, where their sinuses would swell up because of the low pressure environment in the cockpit and block their eustachian tubes and block their airways and all kinds of other things. And so you had to talk them through, taking some Afrin or other kind of, decongestant at altitude, which is challenging.
That sounds like not easy. Wow.
No. And to be able to talk them down safely, because the pain is, it literally feels like your head is exploding.
I believe it.
So those types of things. And we had other kinds of unique situations for my pilots and my divers too. All of them had very specific kinds of things that were relatively common. Obviously, the bends is a big deal with divers, and being able to run the chamber and decompress guys. That was another big part of my challenge, is one of the collateral duties that I had. So I just had this amazing experience. A lot of people are very kind of begrudging about the military, especially right after Vietnam. But my experience was unrivaled. It's just, you can't look to finer men, finer people, finer patriots, super intelligent, and just great people to be around. Just the best of the best. They really are.
I understand. Well, now, some people out there are wondering,